A child vanished into a river, a doll lost to the current, and a black wolf that appears whenever the river whispers its secrets. This isn't a fairy tale. This is a story of a family torn apart, of a river that never forgets, and a guardian that may not be entirely of this world. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about miracles and monsters. The river had always been calm, almost deceptively so. In the small English village of Willowbrook, families had depended on its waters for generations. Children played along its banks, skimming stones and chasing sunlight across the rippling surface. Among them was Lila Harper, a 7-year-old girl with chestnut hair and bright, curious eyes. She carried her favorite doll everywhere, a small cloth figure with blue eyes that had watched over her since infancy. On a warm summer afternoon, Lila wandered farther along the riverbank than usual. The air smelled of wet grass and wildflowers, and the gentle hum of insects filled the quiet moments between the laughter of children. She knelt at the water's edge, dipping her doll into the shallow current, pretending it was embarking on a grand adventure. A sudden slip, a startled scream, and then silence. The water rushed faster than she expected, swallowing the doll and pulling Lila forward. In a single, horrifying moment, she vanished beneath the current. Her mother, Evelyn, had been only steps away, her hand reaching out too late. Thomas, her father, waded into the icy water, desperation gripping him. Villagers poured in, shouting and searching, but the river offered nothing. Hours became days, days stretched into weeks, and still no trace appeared. Only the endless current, whispering secrets it would not reveal. At night, whispers filled the village. They spoke of the river's memory, of children it had taken and never returned. Some claimed to see shadows in the trees, a massive black wolf, its amber eyes glinting in the moonlight, watching silently. Shadow, they called it. Evelyn sat by the empty window, clutching Lila's doll, now only a memory of her lost child. Thomas wandered the riverbanks, dragging nets and peering into murky depths. Sophie, Lila's older sister, stopped playing entirely, haunted by silence where laughter had once echoed. Months later, the first sign appeared. A fisherman, casting his line at the bend where Lila vanished, froze mid-motion. Tangled in reeds and mud was the doll. Its blue eyes, though faded, glimmered unnaturally. Evelyn fell to her knees. It can't be," she whispered. That night, Shadow returned. Its howls echoed across the village, sharper than any wolf had ever sounded. It appeared at the tree line, watching, guarding, waiting. Sophie clutched the doll to her chest. Occasionally, she thought she saw movement in the mist, shadows that shifted deliberately. She whispered, "Lila?" But only the doll's blue eyes seemed to answer. The river had begun to remember. The return of the doll changed everything. At first it was subtle, strange ripples in the river, shadows at the forest edge, whispers that carried across the village at night. Then came the sightings. Children claimed to see Lila's small figure playing along the banks, tossing a doll into the current, then vanishing before anyone could reach her. Adults whispered, fearful and awed. Evelyn could hardly sleep. She kept the doll on her mantle, but often found it moved slightly, angled to face the doorway as if waiting for something. Thomas, rational but desperate, refused to acknowledge the supernatural, insisting the river had returned only a token, a piece of memory. Yet Sophie had seen it clearly. One evening she crept outside, drawn to the river by a strange tug she could not name. Across the water, a small figure crouched beside the reeds. Amber eyes glowed behind her in the shadows, the wolf ever vigilant. The village elder, Benjamin Clark, arrived that night, his eyes scanning the river and forest like a man who had walked in shadow his entire life. "The river does not give back what it takes," he said gravely. "It returns something transformed. You may have your daughter, but she carries a part of the water and the guardian within her." Evelyn clutched the doll. But she's just a child, she protested. How could she carry whatever this is? Benjamin shook his head. The river does not choose children for what they are, only for what they may become. And Shadow, the wolf, watches over that transformation. That night, the mist over Willowbrook thickened, curling across rooftops and into the streets. The river murmured as if speaking, carrying the faint echo of a child's laughter. Shadow appeared again at the edge of the forest, watching the Harper house, amber eyes gleaming. Lila had not yet returned in person, but the river and the wolf had begun preparing for her. Sophie, unable to resist, whispered to the doll, "Please, bring her back safely." The wind seemed to answer with a low, haunting howl that reverberated through the trees. Somewhere beyond the bend, in the dark of the forest, a guardian waited. Strange events escalated. Livestock refused to graze near the river. Villagers reported fleeting reflections of a little girl in the water where no one stood. Tracks appeared overnight, one set small, barefoot, another massive, pawed. They led from the river into the forest, then vanished. Oliver Reed, a friend of the family, claimed to see Lila with Shadow near the reeds. She was laughing, he said, voice trembling. But it wasn't the Lila I knew. Her eyes, they shone with something ancient, something that belonged to the river. Benjamin Clark warned the family again. "You must understand, the river remembers everything. It shaped her. The wolf guarded her. She is your daughter, yes, but a part of her is theirs. You cannot force her to fit entirely in your world." At night, Sophie often saw Lila standing by the window, murmuring words in a soft, unfamiliar language, carried on the wind like water over rocks. Thomas tried to rationalize it, trauma, isolation, but deep down, he feared something more. Shadow had vanished into the forest months ago, yet its presence lingered. Tracks would appear overnight, leading from the river toward the trees, then disappear. Lila sometimes followed them in her sleep, whispering, "Shadow." The villagers began to fear the river, yet none dared stop visiting it. Everyone sensed that the coming reunion would be extraordinary and possibly dangerous. Some villagers, led by Derek Shaw, sought to track Shadow and end the mystery. Armed with lanterns and determination, they crept along the misty riverbank one night. The forest loomed, shadows stretching unnaturally in the lantern light. Shadow appeared silently on a ridge above them. Its amber eyes glowed, and a low growl rolled across the riverbank. The men froze, their hearts pounding. When they tried to advance, the wolf vanished into the mist, leaving them uneasy and unsure if they had been seen or warned. Meanwhile, Lila stirred in her sleep in the Harper house. She murmured softly, her hands moving as if guiding some invisible presence. The doll lay by her side, small and innocuous, yet filled with the river's memory. By dawn, the hunters returned to the village, shaken. Shadow had protected her, and none could say whether it was a guardian, a predator, or something older than the forest itself. The night of Lila's return was moonless, the river silvered by faint starlight. A figure emerged from the shallow water, wet hair clinging to her face, clutching the doll. Shadow prowled behind her, amber eyes gleaming in the darkness, ensuring no one harmed her. Evelyn ran forward, sobbing. Thomas followed, cautious yet desperate. Sophie whispered, "It's really you." Lila hesitated, then stepped fully into the moonlight. I didn't know if I could come back," she admitted. Her eyes glimmered with something old and powerful. Benjamin Clark arrived at dawn. "The river does not give back what it takes," he said, "and the guardian ensures survival. You have your daughter, but she carries the river and the wolf within her. Respect it." Shadow vanished into the forest silently, leaving only the echo of its presence. Life slowly returned to a fragile normal. Lila stayed with her family, yet traces of the river lingered in her gaze, in her movements, in her dreams. At night, she sometimes rose and followed invisible tracks toward the river, whispering its guardian's name, Shadow. Evelyn and Thomas understood that some mysteries were not theirs to solve. The doll, now clean and dry, rested beside her bed, a reminder of what had passed and what remained. The river murmured continuously, carrying secrets, memories, and the faintest echo of laughter. Shadow prowled beyond the tree line, watching silently, ensuring that the bond between the river, the guardian, and the returned child remained unbroken. The village whispered of miracles and omens. Children played, villagers watched the river with awe, and the Harpers cherished a daughter returned, but changed forever. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the forest, the wolf waited patiently, its amber eyes reflecting the silvered waters. Always watching, always guarding. The story had reached its reunion, but the river and its guardian would never release their hold completely. The river doll lay in Lila's hands, blue eyes unblinking, a secret keeper of waters, wolves, and mysteries that could never be fully understood. Believed the river returned their daughter, but was it truly Lila, or something the water reshaped, guarded by the wolf? Shadow still prowls the forest, watching silently, ensuring that the bond between the river and the child remains unbroken. The river doll sits in her hands, blue eyes unblinking, holding secrets the river will never share. So tell me, if the river could take and transform someone you love, would you dare bring them back?